meeting of the Planning Committee being held under the Local Authorities Coronavirus Meetings Wales Regulations 2020. It is not practicable for this meeting to be broadcast live. However, a recording of this meeting will be made available as soon as possible after the meeting has concluded. We welcome the use of the Welsh language at meetings. I have had no request for people to speak Welsh today, so this meeting will be conducted in English only. Please can members use the chat bar to indicate when you want to speak, and remember to keep your microphone muted when you are not talking. Right, thank you. Move on to the agenda. Agenda item 1, attendance and apologies. Geraint, do we have apologies?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've received apologies from Councillors Veronica Crick and Emma Rapier.
Thank you. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Geraint, could you please ask members in alphabetical order to state whether they have any interest to declare?
No problem. Thank you, Chair. If I can start with Councillor Stuart Ashley, please.
Are you sitting comfortably? It's 5, 6, 7 and 8. Personal interest, member of Cwmbran Community Council.
Thank you.
I have spoken to Polly about this before, and obviously personal, non-presidential. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, I got Councillor Bevan, but like I said, he wasn't in the meeting a second ago. I'm just going to check the participants and just, I don't think he's entered since that. No, it doesn't look like it. Same for Councillor Burnett. I can't see that he's entered either. So I'll move on. Councillor Constance.
Nothing to declare.
Thank you. Councillor Crick's given an apology. Councillor Evans.
Nothing at present, no.
Councillor Hawler.
Nothing, no, thank you.
Councillor James.
Sorry about this, I got to check the dogs out there howling. Yeah, no interest to declare.
Thank you. Sorry. Councillor Jenkins.
Nothing.
Councillor Fay Jones.
Yeah, can I declare a personal non-prejudicial interest in agenda items 5, 6, 7 and 8 as a member of Cwmbran Community Council, and I'm going to declare a personal and prejudicial interest in agenda items 5, 6 and 7 as a close relative lives in the Maltins near the application site.
Thank you very much. Councillor Janet Jones.
And I think I have to, sorry, can I just say I think I'll have to leave the meeting before these items are discussed.
Yeah, and I'll call you back in before the final one then.
Okay, great.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Janet Jones.
None, yeah, thank you.
Cheers. Councillor.
Pass to me. I can't hear anything at the moment, but I've got no interest.
Okay. I've just seen Councillor Bevan has entered the meeting. Councillor Bevan, just checking whether or not you have any interest to declare.
No, none, Geraint.
Okay, thank you. Right, so if I go back to Councillor Parish.
Nothing to declare.
Thank you. And lastly is Councillor Thomas.
Geraint, I need to make a declaration in relation to agenda items 5, 6 and 7. I voiced some opinions about these applications. I've taken advice from the legal department. Whilst it isn't a clear-cut situation, I think it's best if I remove myself from consideration of these matters, as I don't want to disadvantage the planning committee in any way.
Right, thank you, Geraint.
Okay, cheers.
Thanks. We'll move on now to agenda item 3, minutes of the Planning Committee meeting from the 15th of December 2020. Geraint, could you please ask members in alphabetical order to state whether they agree that the minutes are a true and accurate record of that meeting?
No problem, thank you, Chair. If I can start with Councillor Ashley.
Agreed.
Councillor Bevan. You're on mute, Councillor Bevan.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Constance,
Agreed.
Councillor Evans,
Agreed.
Councillor Hawler,
Agreed.
Councillor James,
Agreed.
Councillor Jenkins, Councillor Jenkins,
Agreed.
thank you. Councillor Faye Jones,
Agreed.
Councillor Janet Jones,
Agree.
Councillor O'Connell,
Agreed.
Councillor Parish,
Agreed.
and Councillor Thomas.
Agreed.
Thank you,
Thank you all.
Geraint. Thank you. Right, we'll move on to agenda item 4, planning appeal 20/appeal/04/REF. Construction of proposed coffee shop at Lakeside, Llantarnam, Cwmbran. This item is for information only and is to inform committee of the outcome of the appeal, which was dismissed by the planning inspector. Geraint, has anybody indicated they want to speak?
There's nothing in the chat bar and no raised hands at the moment, Chair.
Can't see it. Thank you, Geraint. If you all agree that you note the information, we'll move on then. Okay, thank you. Geraint, before we move to agenda item 5, can you confirm that councillors Faye Jones and Dave Thomas have left the meeting because they have declared a prejudicial interest in items 5, 6 and 7?
No problem, Chair. I'll just check the participants list now.
Thank you.
Right, Councillor Faye Jones has just left, and I see Councillor Thomas. Yeah, they've both left, Chair.
Thank you, Geraint. Right, we move on now to agenda item 5. Planning application 20/P/0477/CND, and its discharge of conditions of planning consent 17/P/0914/FUL, discharge of condition 6 as landscaping, and discharge of condition 8 village green at land off Newport Road, Llantarnam, Cwmbran. Can I ask Helen Smith, Principal Planner, to present the report?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, good morning. Before I start the presentation, I have a late representation to report to you from Lynn Neagle, a member of the Senedd for Torfaen. So I shall read out the comments that we've received. Residents were promised the area would be developed and landscaped for use as a village green, which would form a local point in the community and hopefully reduce antisocial behaviour. The work would also enhance the area's historical location and be an attractive viewpoint when entering the village. I was concerned to receive contact from Mr. and Mrs. Smith in November 2020, which outlined unexpected sighting of an electricity substation by Western Power Distribution on land designated as part of the village green. The positioning of the substation impacts on the space designed for the community use and also causes a visual disturbance. I understand the siting of the substation and any potential breach of the original conditions have been referred to the Planning Committee and is due to be discussed during the meeting on January the 19th. Mr. and Mrs. Smith have asked for my support in submitting correspondence ahead of this meeting, which I am happy to do so as their elected representative in the Senedd. Since Mr. and Mrs. Smith contacted my office originally, I have written to Bron Avon on 2 occasions regarding the position of the substation and have also received contact from ward councillors who have expressed concern regarding any changes made to the original plan presented to residents. Bron Avon have responded that nearby residents were consulted regarding the substation plans and they have fully complied with planning conditions. From information provided by Bron Avon, I understand 2 of the locations were considered by their contractors and Western Power, but these were ruled out due to the proximity to overhead cables and water tanks. They have also said Western Power would ultimately make the decision in terms of the location of the substation. Mr. and Mrs. Smith maintain they have not been consulted and they are only aware of the consultation in relation to the trees and hedges. They have said they have not witnessed any posting of public notices in relation to any variations to the original plan conditions and have canvassed their neighbours who have also confirmed that they were not consulted. Requests by residents for a meeting with Bron Afon were taken up, and while I appreciate the disruption the pandemic has caused to the usual functions of organisations, I do believe a socially distanced or virtual meeting could have been accommodated prior to the current alert level 4 restrictions. Mr. and Mrs. Smith do not object to the substation itself, but simply what they feel is the inappropriate siting of one on space promised entirely for community use. Indeed, I understand a number of alternative suggestions for placements have been made by residents and ward members, one of which is next to Mr. and Mrs. Smith's house. Mr. Smith has told me Western Power have confirmed that it could be moved if they are given permission to do so by Bron Afon, which is contrary to the information I have previously received from Bron Afon. I have historically raised formal concerns regarding the protection of village greens or green spaces that is much valued by communities in Torfaen. I am concerned that the siting of the substation on the land significantly alters what was originally promised to residents when the planning application was being considered, and I can understand that the concern this has caused for some residents. So I'll start the presentation now. Bear with me a second.
Thank you.
Okay. This application is for discharge conditions of condition 6, which is a landscaping scheme for the site, and discharge condition 8, which is details of the village green for the site, relating to the original planning permission 17P0914. The site is off Newport Road, and members may recall that the original planning permission related to 22 dwellings and a commercial area. This application is currently just in relation to the residential area. Here we have an aerial photo. This is the application site for the residential area, and the commercial area is in this location. Here we have the recently constructed the maltings. The applicants have submitted an amended landscaping scheme following various discussions since they originally submitted the discharge conditions applications in August, where consultations have been carried out with residents in relation to the proposals. The proposals relate to the removal of the existing poplar trees in the landscape buffer and the replacement with woodland planting. It also includes the strengthening of the existing hedgerow and the trees within the hedgerow along this boundary here and wrapping around to Newport Road. The landscaping scheme also includes details of landscaping of the open space area to the north and also incidental planting around the site, and crucially the details of landscaping of the village green area, together with details of street furniture and some public art. This is the original scheme submitted by Redrow. That was back in, that was given planning permission in 2018. Members may recall the importance of this landscape buffer between Teacock Close and the proposed development. Redrow sold the site to Bron Afon, and as Bron Afon were developing it for 100% affordable housing, some amendments to the house types had to be made to reach the development quality standards. This is the Bron Afon scheme, which was the amendments were approved. As you can see, the general layout remains the same. House types were changed, but again, the integrity of that landscape buffer and the village green were maintained. Reference has been made to the substation. As set out in the report, unfortunately, the substation doesn't require planning permission, and this is something that, as a planning authority, we haven't been able to influence. The substation, we've asked them to show it within on the submitted scheme, and here we have, this is Pentra Lane here. This is an access route into the village green area. Substation is located in this position here. In an attempt to mitigate the visual impact, we have requested that additional landscaping be proposed around the screen to soften its impact. Here we have some of the details of the street furniture to be provided within the village green area. And here we have some updated photographs provided by Councillor Slade. This shows, obviously, works has commenced on site. This is the substation that has been referred to. And this is a view from Teacock Lane to the substation. And here we have, you can just see some of the poplar trees which are due to be removed and replaced with a comprehensive woodland planting. And here we have some street view images showing what the site was like before. Here we have, this is a view up Teacock Close. And here we have looking towards the site, you can see the poplar trees, and then you have the other trees and the hedgerow in front of that, the poplar trees. This is a view looking towards the site from the north. And here we have the access into the main part of the site. And again, here we go, looking north up Newport Road with the hedgerow to be reinforced and replanted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Helen. Now I would like to invite Councillor Alan Slade, Ward Member, to address the committee as a third-party speaker. Councillor Slade, you have 5 minutes to speak, and you will be timed by Geraint. We can't hear you, Alan. We can't hear you now, no. Can't.
What about now?
Yes, can hear you now.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, members. I've been contacted by residents who've explained that for a variety of reasons, they are unable to participate in this meeting, and they have asked that I speak on their behalf. From the report, you will see that residents have reluctantly accepted the proposal set out in the report, but you would be mistaken if you believed that residents were happy about the situation. Far from it. In fact, they're furious. They're furious that contractors have been allowed to cut down mature trees and hedgerows without prior approval or consultation. They're furious that the developer has, without consultation, allowed the site to be blighted by the construction of an electricity substation in such a prominent location. They're furious that construction works have been allowed to continue unabated, despite the fact that none of the pre-commencement conditions attached to the planning permission have been approved. And they're also furious that the council has seemingly collaborated with Bronavon to deliver a significantly different and poorer quality development than that which was originally promised. Residents would have been far happier if Bronavon had simply complied with the pre-commencement conditions. Instead, their contractors have turned up on site without notice, consultation or approval and cut down mature trees and hedgerows. Western Power also turned up, again without notice or consultation, and started to install a large electricity substation on the area that was supposed to be a village green. The situation today is that you are being asked to approve a landscaping scheme that has essentially been designed to mitigate the appearance of the non-approved works that have already been completed. Residents feel that they have been browbeaten into accepting these proposals, not because they offer an attractive or well-designed development, but because they have been told that this is the best offer on the table. And if the proposals are agreed today, work will start on the landscaping next Monday. For my own part, what has been allowed to happen on this site has made me lose all faith in the planning process. I was a member of the committee that originally approved the planning application and agreed with residents that the number of changes made to this development make it an entirely different development than that which members originally approved. If you consider that the type, style and size of the houses have changed, the parking arrangements have changed, the boundary treatments have changed, the landscaping of the site has changed, and a substantial electricity substation has been situated on the village green area. I fail to see how anyone can argue that the cumulative effect of all these changes results in the same development for which planning permission had been granted. I have also been left dismayed and bemused that Bronavon can so completely ignore the pre-commencement conditions of a planning permission to such an extent and with complete impunity. I guess it can't do any harm to have a plan in accord with the local authority. I'm not going to ask that you reject this application simply because the residents who I am elected to serve have been browbeaten into accepting that this is the best deal on the table, and I certainly don't want to endanger that. What I am going to do is withdraw my request to speak on the agenda items that follow this one, because to be honest, I don't see the point any longer. My personal opinion is that Bronavon are about as trustworthy as Judas Iscariot and will do whatever they want, irrespective of what is said here today. Frankly, I will be amazed if landscaping work start next week, but I guess time will tell. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Slade. Helen, do you wish to comment on remarks made by the ward member?
I think Richard Lewis will come in if that's okay.
Yes, yes, Richard can come in.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I accept the fact that Bronavon did implement this development without complying with these pre-commencement conditions. We were aware of that quite quickly, and we were in talks with Bronavon quite quickly. What we did do, we didn't feel that there was any merit in serving any sort of stop notice on them, because what we wanted to do was work with them to get a landscaping scheme that we were satisfied with, and to involve the residents. Now, I understand that Bronavon have consulted with the residents as well as ourselves, and I believe that in working together we have achieved a very good landscaping scheme, a very good buffer there. In terms of the amendments that were made, there is provision in the planning process because things do change, and in this case Bronavon, as a different developer, needed to comply with different standards. There were some minor amendments made with the layout, but what we did make sure of is that the most important issues in terms of provision of a village green, provision of the buffer along Teacoat Close were maintained, and that is what has happened. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Richard. Geraint, have you seen any hands going up? Because I haven't.
Councillor Evans has just gone up, Chair.
Oh, right. Steve, would you like to...
Councillor Evans, then Councillor Ashley.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm deeply concerned yet again a big developer is not listening to the things that we're putting in place. First of all, as you heard from the elected member from the AM, the substation can be moved. So I'm requesting they move it back where it should have been originally, if that can be put in place. And I think we need to start making sure that these developers realise we're here to do the best for our communities and not the best for these developers. It seems to be an ongoing issue we don't seem to be addressing. So we need to be looking at this to put something in place to stop this continually happening.
Right, thank you, Steve. Richard, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, just in terms of the substation, it's not a repositioning of a substation, it's a new substation. As Helen mentioned in her presentation, we've got no control over that. We have written to Western Power. We are concerned that it was chosen to be sited in that particular location. If we could have stopped it, we would have. But as Helen has said, they can do that under their own permitted development rights. I know that the residents concerned have taken it up directly with Western Power and Bronavon, but from a council point of view, apart from trying to get the substation properly landscaped, there's very little that we would be able to do about it.
At the end of the day, we're there to do the best for the well-being of the people within the community, and how cleaner and greener. I mean, by putting that there, that's mitigated more work. Things ripped out because of the necessity to put it there. But the AM has stated that she's approaching our people that it can be moved. So there's no reason why it cannot be moved unless it was specifically asked to be put there. Thank you.
Right, do you want to come in again, Richard, or not?
I don't think I can add. I tend to agree with Councillor Evans. I think it should have been in another position. I don't know what happened in terms of looking at all the different options. And as I say, if we, from a planning point of view, could have got it moved, we would have. But there is very little, as I say, that we can do, regrettably.
Mm. Right, thank you, Richard. Stuart?
Yeah, I agree, but I must admit the aesthetics of that substation stuck exactly where it is. I totally agree with the local councillor, residents, and the AM. It's exactly a dog's breakfast, is what I was thinking. Apt description. It's not exactly what you want there. The other aspect, if this was on the, Steve would know this because he serves on it, if this was on the Brecon Beacons, this would be hit with their aesthetic quality, because we're in Llantarnam, we've got a wonderful landscape down there, and this development was, when it originally designed, fitted in quite well with that landscape down there. But as we're not on the Brecon Beacons, we can't go there because unfortunately Richard doesn't have that capability. The Llantarnam landscape has quite a quality to it. Part of what we're looking at down there with the trees and the village green down there fits within that Llantarnam landscape, which is something the local community council also looks at. The other point about the hedgerow, and I have had discussions on this, is that when we actually did a site visit on this, if I remember rightly, back a few years ago, at which Councillor Slade was on, and made the remark, which I did notice, was that tree row down there and the hedge landscape down there, which does fit in, it was the quality of that whole setup. And unfortunately, it seems like Bronavon has come down there and played around with it. We need to get the quality of trees back, bearing in mind that poplars and ash are problematic at the moment because the ash has got dieback. You have a look around, it needs to be replacing like with like so that we don't lose that quality of that, and we don't lose the biodiversity, which is part of our well-being directive. And I worry about looking at the works that the photographs show. And also, poplar is not, the conversation I also had is a tree that can be almost as notorious because it does have a tendency to winds and things, if it gets to a certain age, fall over. I need confirmation of this. But having looked at those photographs, that's going to need a lot of work to get that back to the quality that we saw a few years ago. Comment, please. Right,
Richard or Helen?
I'll come back in. Thank you, Chair. Yes, in terms of the landscaping, yes, the poplar trees and the ash will be removed. It's accepted that the poplar trees are reaching the end of their life, and they can deteriorate quite rapidly and cause issues with falling. So what we have secured in consultation with our landscape and tree officer is a comprehensive replanting scheme for that area. The replanting will consist of heavy standards and extra heavy standards of lime, rowan, mountain ash, oak, cherry and field maple, all native species. This will have understory planting as well. So as it's going to be planted, quite a heavy standard, and they're bringing the planting schedule forward, it'll have more time to mature, and long term, that type of planting will have more value in terms of the ecology of the site. And our landscape officer said that long term, it will actually be a significant improvement on that landscape buffer.
Are we going to be able to, can I come back, Chair? Are we going to be able to maintain that village green stroke hedgerow there back to what it was? Because at the moment, the photographs I've seen, it does look pretty awful at the moment. Are you satisfied about that?
Yes, yeah. The other part of the landscaping scheme is obviously the removal of the ash, but they are going to be replacing those with other trees, and also it is quite gappy, the hedgerow. So what they're planning to do is strengthen that as well, and those are the works that they are planning to do. As soon as they get permission, subject to permission being approved, they would commence that straight away, and then at least we have another year or two for that to mature and establish as a buffer. So the strengthening planting relates to the hedgerow and with the trees within the hedgerow all around the site down Teacock Close, Pentra Lane and Newport Road. And then you have the woodland planting on the inner part of the landscape buffer.
And what level of ongoing maintenance are we guaranteed for this?
Yep, the details submitted also include a management plan, long-term management plan, which will be managed by Bron Avon. There are a series of works that they will need to do on a yearly basis, and probably more frequently than that as well. And that is going to be properly managed, which will also then enhance that even further and maintain it, and to ensure the longevity of that landscape buffer.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. I got Jason O'Connell, next one on my list. Jason.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to agree with Councillor Slade, really. He did a really good job of reflecting, I think, the anger of the local residents. And it's clear to me that it feels like another St Giles ancient hedge type of situation where this developer has come in and is effectively walking all over the planning process. So my question is, as a committee, are we allowing this to continue? I think we should be sending out a message to developers that it can't and it won't. And I'd like to know what punitive measures we can take for Bron Avon, who effectively are willing to spend new money on big developments like this and overrule the planning process, while they can't even afford to maintain their current housing stock. So I guess my question to the planning officer is, what punitive measures can we put in place to prevent developers like this doing it again?
Right, I think Richard's going to come in now.
Yeah, it is very difficult. The ideal for us would be that when we're aware that a development is about to commence, that we're able to monitor it properly, which means that officers would visit the site quite regularly to check that all pre-commencement conditions and Section 106 clauses have been properly complied with. My problem is I simply don't have enough people to do that. We've got an enforcement team that's extremely small. We react to complaints, so we react to all complaints that are made, but we haven't got the staff to be able to proactively now, and that's been an ongoing problem for many years. We simply don't have enough people. However, in terms of when we do know that something has happened and something hasn't been complied with, where we do get these complaints, we do investigate and we do take appropriate measures. I always have to bear in mind that the advice, the very clear advice from government, is that we only take formal action in exceptional circumstances. And we have generally found that where a developer is willing to work with us, we get far better results. But a developer coming into a site and simply removing a tree, that's very difficult, as you imagine, to stop if we are not there in the first place. In terms of any measures on Bron Avon, we've obviously, the good thing I think with Bron Avon is that the original condition was requiring the landscaping to be implemented following the completion of the development. What Bron Avon have agreed to do is to implement the landscaping right now. So that's something that they've agreed to do, that we've accepted, that we will accept them doing. And following, if members do decide to approve this application, then Bron Avon, in their submitted details, will commence that landscaping straight away. That's a better position than on the original permission.
Could I therefore ask, it might be a good idea for us to defer this application until the next meeting so that they've got time to rectify the site. I drove past there the other day and it looked horrendous, I have to say, from when we did the site visit some time ago on a different application. It looked like the site had been completely bulldozed through, for want of a better word, with a scant number of trees left around the edges. So if they're claiming or saying they're going to spend the next week or two to make it right, then maybe we should defer this until our next planning meeting and take a view then as to what's been done.
Chair, may I come back in there?
Yes.
Just to say that the rectification of this is actually Bronavon having approval to go in and do it. They've actually asked me whether they can go in and start this scheme, and I've said no because they've not got approval for the scheme in front of us. So then Bronavon being able to go in and plant in accordance with his details very much depends on the members giving approval. So if it was deferred, there's no planting that we would want Bronavon to do because it hasn't been approved. I hope that makes sense.
Right, are you okay with that now, Jason? Right, thank you. Hugh, I've got you next on the list. I can't hear you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Richard, for your honest answer earlier about the resourcing situation. For me, there's a number of concerns here. I think one, obviously, we need to try and take steps within the council to increase the officer resource that we've got within building control and the enforcement area, because this is not the first time, unfortunately, that we have seen developers proceed with a development that deviates away from the consent where a planning application has been brought before this committee and it's been approved with specific conditions, and then those conditions have not been complied with, and that is a concern for me, and we've seen this a few times now, as brought up by a number of other members of the committee. I note, Richard, that you said that you were aware of this at an early junction on this particular site. So why wasn't a stop order issued on it if there was a significant deviation away from the preconditions? And how many times have we issued stop orders on developers on applications within the borough? I note you say that you can quite often achieve a more favourable outcome by engaging with them to try and in this case, it does seem sort of retrospectively try to negate or minimise the visual impact and amenity of it. So, I mean, I would like to see increased enforcement. I am concerned that this is not the first time that this has happened. We've seen this a few times now on this committee, and I guess the other thing is there doesn't appear, from what other members have said and what residents have said and the representation from the MS, to have been a proper consultation process carried out with the residents in the area. So that is something that needs to be looked at as well. Are these companies like Redrow and Bronavon actually undertaking the consultations? And I guess the other thing which was really alarming for me is a procedural thing, and perhaps Torfaen needs to take this up with Welsh Government, and that is part of a major consideration on the original application was the village green area. And what is the status legally of village green areas if developers are putting in an open space for use by the community? How can it then be possible for a power company to go in and utilise that space for siting a power substation on it. I know you, in the report on the bottom of page 39, it says that it's an electrical substation installed by Western Power, and it's regrettable that it's been cited there. Well, surely common sense, in my view, would dictate that if an area is going to be designated as a village green and it's for community use, then by installing a substation on there, that prevents the community from using that bit of the village green. And I wanted to ask more about the village green status, legal designation, but I think it flags up a major flaw in the planning process, if you like, if we as the planning committee and you as principal planners in Torfaen don't have any control whatsoever over where these power companies can install their substations, because they're entitled to do so under their own delegated powers. For me, that flags up a major issue, and I think that needs to be taken up with the Welsh Government. Thank you.
And Richard, do you want to come in?
Yeah, quite a lot of things in there. Let me see. I'm hoping I can deal with them all. First of all, I think you mentioned about the enforcement powers and why we didn't serve a stop notice. A stop notice is really for in cases where what is being done cannot be rectified, and it's mainly, for example, listed buildings where doing some work on a listed building is irretrievable and can't be put right. Where things can be put right, it's very often a stop notice won't be appropriate to do that. In this particular case, in fairness, we were involved very quickly in this process. As soon as we were aware of it, an officer visited the site, spoke to the developer, and from that point, we worked with the developer to rectify the situation. But because it involved the landscaping that was outside the developable area, there's nothing stopping the developers from carrying out the landscaping. They're not doing anything that would prevent them from doing that. So our remit really was to try and make sure that that landscaping was brought forward in the scheme, so it had an immediate effect rather than being left after the development. And I believe that's what we've achieved through the negotiation that we've had with Brynavon. So a stop notice wouldn't have been appropriate. And as I say, it does come with compensation provisions, which could be very substantial when you put a development on stop. There's very exceptional reasons for doing that. In terms of the consultation, we did consult with all the residents on this particular application. I understand that Brynavon also engaged with the residents, but what consultation Brynavon or any developer carries out separately as part of the planning application is obviously for the developer to decide. We can't compel them to do that, but we do make sure we carry out our own consultation. And then the village green, it has, although it's called a village green, it should really be called an open space in planning terms, because so there's not to mix up with village greens that have regulatory status, and have protection from the Act. Again. This is not a village green like that. It was an open space that we felt was necessary on the development and will be protected through planning conditions. The substation is very regrettable. We weren't aware of that happening. We are looking to see whether in the future, is it possible to prevent such things from happening in the future? And I think that given members' concerns, whatever the outcome of this particular application, we are quite happy to write to Western Power and Brynavon to express members' concerns about what has happened with the substation. But really, it is a separate matter from planning and can't be dealt with as such through the planning process. I think that's probably, yeah, or hopefully I've answered all your questions, Councillor Bevan.
Yep, thank you.
Right, thank you. I've got Janet next on the list.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Richard. You've answered quite a lot of the questions that I was going to raise. So there is one other. If, as we read, that Brynavon want to start the landscaping, I think it's on the 24th, who, if any, will monitor that they are doing this as per agreement with yourselves and your officers?
Through you, Chair, in the circumstances, Councillor Jones, we will make sure that that does happen. So yes, we will. We are very aware of the sensitivities on this site now, and we will make sure that the Bronavon do start that landscaping as they say they will.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you, Richard. Stuart, I've got you down.
The one thing I didn't say in my previous bit was about protected trees, Wildlife and Country Act and Hedge Act. I didn't know, there didn't any mention of anything. Whether I mentioned that when we were out and visited the site, because that's a whole plethora of stuff along with protected village greens and open spaces, because the Bronavon are a bit notorious on this in their other quarter of actually, Steve's nodding because we know this one well. And this is where they really do need to up their act on this, because I'm thinking with Jason, with the business where we had to do in other places in Cwmbran, there is a generally held common view in Cwmbran that what open space is open season for building things. And this is where the sensibility is coming on this as well. So not only the whole point about hedgerows, trees, etc., etc., it's a very sensitive subject, and I don't blame the local members having the view they've got, because Llantarnam is being built over is a commonly held view, and that is very sensitive issue. Now, we need a staged approach to this to make sure that this whole thing gets rectified, and that we seem to be enforcing this. And we've got history, we've got St Giles, we've got South Sebastopol, and the residents out there are feeling a bit sensitive about this. So this is another one, I'm afraid. Comment, Avu?
Does anybody want to comment? Richard or Helen?
All I would say, I think, is I completely agree with Councillor Ashley. We in the planning department, and I've been in this for a very long time, and landscaping has never been so important. That's recognised through Welsh Government guidance and our own policies as well. We do all we can to retain trees, and do all we can to make sure that landscaping does go ahead. Where we know that things are happening, we are there very quickly to try and make them, to try and prevent things from being removed. And we do have powers of tree preservation orders as well to protect the best trees in the borough. So I can only agree with Councillor Ashley. We don't want trees to be removed. We do all we can to negotiate retention of existing trees and hedgerows whenever we can. But we do recognise that development does happen. And there always needs to be a balance, but landscaping, I would say now, is very high on the planning agenda.
Thank you, Chair. May I come back very quick? Yes, I know you guys recognise that. The thing is that if you've got decent landscape round housing, it does increase the value of it. So from a developer's point of view, it must be a fact as well, I would have thought.
Right, thank you, Stuart. I got John Haller next. On the line, John.
Yes, this will be quick. It's just a statement, really. We turn up week after week and we hear the words rectify, regrettable, mitigation, in the future, ignored. I despair, I really do. I mean, something's got to be done, surely. I know we're lacking resources, but it's just, we could copy and paste this every meeting. I just despair. That's it, really. Right,
John, I think members can help planning by, when the budget comes out, asking for the planning department to have more enforcement officers. That's one way out of it. I mean, if there are designated officers to do this job constantly, I don't think we'd be in the muddle we're in today. But that's my point of view. I don't know about other people's point of view, but I don't think it's fair to ask the officers to comment on that, unless you want to, of course.
No, I'm quite happy with that. It was just a statement, really. Thank you.
Yes, yeah, I know how you feel, John. I got Steve next.
Yeah, the question I want to ask is, if national power where are they in the state of equation with the 7 well-beings of the Welsh Government and with our cleaner, greener approach? Because if they can plant and put anything, whatever they want, where does that come into the environmentally issues of the Welsh Government directives?
Who would like to come in on this?
Shall I quickly?
Yes.
Sorry, I may be repeating myself now, but Welsh Government.
Yeah, can I just say, Steve, you mean the Wellbeing Act? That's what you're referring to? Right, thank you. Sorry, Richard.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, the Wellbeing Act, and particularly now in planning the placemaking policies that have come to the fore, very much, as I said before, place this very high on the agenda, and developers are having to sort of catch up with that, because whenever we get applications now, the placemaking policies from Welsh Government are very strong, and I think that going forward, as we look at schemes and start refusing poor schemes because they don't have the required landscaping, we'd be expecting that to be supported on appeal. That sends a very definite message. But from my point of view, as I said, I've been in planning for a long time. We are negotiating far more schemes that have a lot of landscaping and heritage value than ever before.
Thank you. Jason, would you like to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to focus again on this specific application and whether we approve it or not. I feel bad for the residents in that this development is going to go ahead regardless, one way or the other. So we're being asked to approve a modification effectively. If we turn this down, then the residents are left with a wasteland effectively that's been bulldozed with a big green box in it. So there's no opportunity for Bronavon to rectify the mistakes they've made. So I almost feel like my arm is being twisted in that I have to approve it in order to give the residents relief effectively from opening their curtains and seeing such an eyesore. And I don't like being put in that position, if I'm honest. Bronavon have done something incorrectly here, and we're about to reward them for it by giving them a pass, and I don't want to send that message out. So I'm on the fence. I got to be honest as to what to do with this application.
Yeah, we're not approving the application, actually. We're looking at the discharge of conditions. Yeah. So it is a different matter. It's been approved in the past. Don't know whether
Chair.
No, let me see if an officer would like to come in and answer first, Stuart.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, just to say that this scheme isn't a poor scheme. This is a very good landscaping scheme. I think the issue has been, and we did meet, have talked to residents about this, in terms of the scheme itself. I'm not quite sure how much better we can do with the scheme in front of us. We've got a good scheme. The issue for me really is for Bronavon to get on with that scheme as quickly as possible to rectify what's there at the moment. But the option for members, if they felt the scheme of landscaping was unacceptable and they wanted something different, then of course members have the right to refuse that. But we then have to look at what enhancement we wanted to a scheme that I feel is already very good. And the other problem with doing that, of course, I'm just being honest with members, that it delays it, the implementation of that. And my worry is, and I'm not trying to blackmail or anything like that, but my worry is that we are moving out of the landscaping season, the planting season, and we may miss the opportunity to do that. But just wanted to, I did want members to know that they do have the right, obviously, to refuse it, but refusing it, all that means is that we would be looking for a different kind of landscaping scheme, which I would be struggling because of all the native planting, the substantial 12-metre buffer that they've already got there. I believe we've probably achieved, in my opinion, the best that we can at the moment.
Chair, all I wanted to ask was, could we approve this but have a report back on it to find out what's happening? That was whether Richard could advise us that we could do that, because it's a bit like the Teacock situation with the hedge, where we need to know what's going on. Maybe can we do that? I don't know.
Right, Richard, again to you.
I think that if members wanted that to happen at a committee, we could. The only thing that I would say is there are many sites on the go at the moment, and obviously there's a lot of other very important sites that are on the go at the moment, and to report them all obviously would be very difficult. If members felt that this was very different to all the other schemes and specifically wanted a report back on this one, then certainly, you know, I'd have a look at how we could best do that.
It just sends out a message because we've just voiced this, I think, rather well in this discussion, and it's a case of sending out a message. We won't necessarily do it every case, but I get the feeling from the meeting that we're not happy about it.
No, I wouldn't say that, Stuart. But
we're happy about what you're suggesting. We're not happy attitude of developers. That's what I meant.
Yeah, right. Yes. Yeah, we agree with you on that.
Yeah. But, so I wouldn't want to report back on every one of these. It would be here for ages. But it's just once in a while. Maybe we need to do it.
Yeah. Well, it's impossible to do it for every situation. But if you wouldn't mind doing it for this one, Richard, set a report in the future.
And I propose it then on that basis.
Right. Can we put that in the condition?
And I'll second it then.
So that's in the conditions now, is it, Richard?
Sorry, Chair, it wouldn't be part of the condition. That is just something that we would do. What I would suggest is if they are going to be planting in this particular planting season, so it would happen very quickly. Once we've looked at that and seen what's been done, perhaps then we would report back to members just to let them know what's been done. But it doesn't need to be a stipulation of the condition at all. That's just something that we can agree that we would do, certainly.
Yes, we'd be grateful for that, Richard. Thank you.
On that basis, I propose it.
Well, I don't think we have to. We've agreed now with Richard that he will do this for this particular.
I'm inclined to agree with Jason. I think our hands are being forced into this one, and we've noted as a committee this whole discussion, agreeing with Councillor Slade and the AM on the whole thing. We're not happy, but we've got to agree with it, and I don't think we've got any choice in that respect.
Right. Thank you, Hugh. I can't hear you.
Thank you, Chair. I think members have quite eloquently discussed and debated this. The one thing that I want to come back to, which is of a concern to me, is this idea about where the substation has been sited, and I wanted clarification, please, from Richard, if possible. To prevent any sort of recurrence of this going forwards, because the report seems to suggest at the moment that this is completely outside of the council's planning officer's control, that these power generating companies can just basically plonk these substations where they like because they've got delegated powers to do so, and that is a concern for me. And what I wanted to ask really was, obviously a site like this is fairly sizable. It needed planning, consent and approval. When the plans are submitted, surely there must be part of the overall consideration of any proposed development must be the power requirements for the additional new housing stock, and one would have thought that there would have been certainly information provided from the distribution companies whether any new buildings would have been adequately served by existing substations, or whether in fact that the new buildings would require a new substation, electricity power substation to be built. And the siting of the substation in this case is what's caused the major problem, along with the associated removal of the hedgerows and trees. And now we've been put in this position where we've been asked to approve remedial actions to try and mitigate the substation. Well, what I'm trying to get at is, at what point does the siting of the substation enter into the planning process? Surely that should be a consideration on the original plans that are brought before the committee and that are approved. And I think the other concern that's been well expressed by other members is that there's a sense of frustration where there's deviation from the plans that were approved by this particular committee.
Right, do you want to come in on that, Richard?
Yeah, in terms of the substation, normally what happens is that once the development has been approved, they will look to see whether or not there's more power required for the additional housing. Very often there's not, and the current power in the area is quite capable of taking the new development. In this case, my understanding subsequently is that there were some issues already, and that putting more properties on the power required this additional substation. I've not known it before, so like this. Normally, if we get schemes in and there is a requirement for a substation, they normally come in with the scheme, so we can see where they're going and we can take appropriate mitigation in terms of screening them and looking at the best position for them. We weren't aware before this that it was required. What we are, however, going to do is to look to see whether, from a planning point of view, we can prevent that from happening in the future. Now, I don't know whether we can, because we've not needed to before, but I think it is a valuable lesson in terms of what's happened here, and I will be looking to see what we can do. I think the second thing is that we are quite prepared to communicate members' concerns to Western Power and to Brynavan, and I am happy if members wanted to write on behalf of the committee to say that we're very concerned about that happening without any due consultation. Yeah, I think that's all I can really say on that. We are conscious that this has happened, and as we've said, it is regrettable, and we wouldn't want it to happen again, and we will look to see whether there is anything that we can do going forward.
Right, Hugh?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just thought, I don't know, I thought there would have been like an expectation as part of the original plans being submitted that they would have included the power considerations at the start of the process. So I thank Richard for his comments, and I welcome the action that he's proposing. I guess I'm just a little bit surprised that this has kind of had to happen, and that consideration wasn't there before as part of the normal process, I guess. So I think obviously it's been a learning experience for us all, and yeah, I don't know, it's difficult to know what to do, because if they have got delegated powers from Welsh Government or whoever to be able to cite these, and the council has got very little say over where they're actually cited, it kind of, in my opinion, it's frustrating from a planning and a planning committee process where we are trying to make, as has been pointed out by other members, and trying to achieve the best possible outcomes for residents. But this is one area that is kind of effectively almost outside of our control, because they've got delegated powers to do so. And I think that is enormously frustrating.
Right, thank you, Hugh. Right, if there are no more questions, does a member want to move a proposal? Can't hear you, Stuart.
I said I had moved already with a proviso that we would have a report back. That was and then Stephen seconded.
That's what you were saying then.
Yeah.
Right. Is there a seconder?
Steve.
Steve.
Well, yeah.
Oh, sorry. Right. Geraint, can we ask you now to ask the members how they want to vote, or against or abstain?
Thank you, Chair. If I can start with Councillor Ashley, please.
As I proposed it, 4.
Councillor Bevan.
I think he's
said
saying
said
four.
4. Yeah.
Yes.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Constance.
4.
Councillor Evans.
4 reluctantly.
Yeah.
Councillor Hawler.
4.
Councillor James.
4.
Councillor Jenkins.
Against.
Councillor Janet Jones.
Reluctantly 4.
Councillor O'Connell.
Against.
Councillor Parish.
4.
That's 8 for and 2 against, Chair.
Right, thank you. So discharge of conditions 6 and 8 of planning consent 17/P/0914 has been agreed. Thank you. Right, we move on. Agenda item 6. Planning application 20/P/0478/CND. Discharge of conditions 10 and 22 of planning consent 17/P/0914/UL relating to knotweed and tree and hedge growth protection at land off Newport Road, Plantarnum, Cumbran. Can I ask Helen Smith, now Principal Planner, to present the report?
Thank you, Chair. Just bring up the presentation. Yeah, as members will be aware, this is another discharge of condition application related to the application that we've just been discussing. So won't go into the background again, but this application is for discharge condition 10, which required details of the removal of the knotweed, Japanese knotweed that was on the site, and also details of how the tree and hedgerow protection were going to be put in place. So the scheme, the scheme in terms of landscaping also included details of the treatments to protect the existing hedgerow and trees. As you can see, there's going to be some fencing along here to protect the existing trees, which will also include the additional planting that they proposed to do up front. The details of the hedgerow, this type of fencing, 2 metres high, and it's in accordance with the British standard for the tree protection measures. We've had no objections from the tree officer with regard to this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Helen. Right, I think Councillor Alan Slade said he did not want to come in and speak for the other items on the agenda. Are you still there, Alan? No, has he gone, Geraint?
Yeah, I am still here. Yes, thank you, Chair. No, I honestly, as I said before, I don't really see the point. It's very difficult to protect trees when they've already been cut down. But
Okay.
thank you. I don't want to speak further in this meeting at all. Thank you.
Not at all. Right, thank you, Alan. Geraint, are there any hands gone up? Because I haven't seen any.
Councillor Bevans has just gone up, Chair.
Yes. Who?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I wanted to ask a question about the condition regarding Japanese knotweed and the programme for the treatment of that. That was a condition 10. Obviously, it's a horrible invasive species that's non-native to this country. Why are we being asked to discharge a condition regarding treatment of Japanese knotweed?
And Helen?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, yes, you are right. Japanese knotweed is a very invasive species, and it's actually dealt with under separate legislation. Normally, we do just put a note to applicant on applications to draw the developer's attention to that those regulations will apply in this case. Sometimes we do condition it, and in this case, it was conditioned. It's just to make sure that the developers do undertake the Japanese knotweed treatment in accordance with that relevant legislation. In this case, they undertook the works in accordance with the legislation, and a specialist environmental protection company undertook those works and have certified that the works have been done in accordance with the legislation.
Thank you.
If that's the case, Helen, why, if they're undertaking the works, why are we being asked to discharge a condition retrospectively? If they've complied with the condition, I fail to understand why this is being brought back before the planning committee now to give approval to discharge it. I'm sorry, I'm confused slightly by this.
Should I come in, Chair? Just yeah,
Richard.
I think, Councillor, yeah, and apologies for this, because as Helen said, we would normally do this simply as an advisory note, because there's already regulations that govern Japanese knotweed. We don't have to govern it under the planning laws. But I think because of this site, we just felt belt and braces that we would put a condition on to make sure the developer did deal with it. As Helen has already said, in actual fact, he has already dealt with it. We've brought these to you, obviously, because it was a request of the local members to make sure that we had all the applications relating to landscaping brought to you. But in this particular case, really, it is just a case of accepting the fact that it's been done in accordance with the regulations, and probably in the future we would leave it as an advisory note, not a condition.
Just on that point, Richard, you're saying that there's other legislation that's applicable that they would have to comply with. What would be the difference then in terms of having it left as a condition versus not having it left as a condition? I guess what I'm trying to get at here is, are there any differences in terms of the onus and the obligations on Bronavon as the owner of the site? Do they differ if there was a planning condition attached, or if they are complying with other legislation? And in terms of going forwards, ongoing maintenance issue in terms of their responsibilities and their obligations for treating this in the future, because as we know, this stuff is horrible, and you only need about an inch of it or half an inch of the root left underground, and it'll come back with a vengeance, you know. So I'm asking, I guess, about the differences versus having a condition in place versus not having a condition in place and dealing with it under other legislation, and whether that has any impact going forwards on their responsibilities.
Chair, if I can just say that the regulations are sufficient and we don't need to add a planning condition to it. We have done in the past simply because sometimes when all the landscaping is part and parcel of the same thing, so part of the landscaping could be clearing the existing vegetation, which could involve Japanese knotweed, and it's up to us to, if we're aware of it, bring it to the developer's attention. But as I said, the regulations are already in place, and they're in place for schemes that don't require planning permission, or for knotweed that comes after something has been approved. So the regulations are there for all circumstances, and that is the best way of controlling knotweed. We normally put an advisory note simply to make developers aware that they need to comply with that legislation.
Thank you. Stuart, you want to come in?
I was interested in this as well. Thank you, Hugh, for bringing that up. Pernicious weed, I believe it's Pernicious Weed Act, isn't it? The things you don't want when you're developing. The window for treating Japanese knotweed is normally around about September, October. So that I'm very curious about this, to be honest. And then the planting window is October to about now. And where the way global climate change is going, it's getting a little shorter unless you've got potted plants, which is the discussion we were having last application, because if you've got big trees, you can put them in at any time of the year. If they're in a big pot, you can put 20 or 30-foot trees in pots, and you can go in anytime you like. So I'm rather intrigued, because we're talking about replacing the poplars and replacing the stuff that's got ash dieback on it. So what if these developers are coming in very big trees, which you can do if you put a garden festival on, you know, the Chelsea Flower Show or something, you can come in and mature tree. So it's really interesting to what they're going to plant in there. But obviously you don't want the Japanese knotweed being in, because otherwise you're into one hell of a problem, as Hugh said. He knows something about this as well, from what I can gather. That's the problem. You almost got 2 seasons to play around with this. So I can. So you putting a note on it, you're telling those developers that they've got to do something about it. The problem is we've got Japanese knotweed rife everywhere in the borough at the moment. So no, I can see why you've got this, but then we got no choice but to approve this, at any rate, from what I can see.
Right. Thank you, Stuart. Yeah. I can't see any more hands up. Have you seen it, Geraint?
Could I move it, please?
Yes. Right.
Second.
Right, there's Moore and a seconder. Right, Geraint, could you please ask members in alphabetical order to state whether they're for, against or abstaining?
No problem, thank you, Chair. I'll start with Councillor Ashley, please.
For.
Councillor Bevan. I think that's a 4.
Yeah.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Constance.
4.
Councillor Evans.
4.
Councillor Hawler.
4.
Councillor James.
4.
Councillor Jenkins.
4.
Councillor Janet Jones.
4.
Councillor O'Connell.
4.
Councillor Parish.
4.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Unanimous. Thank you, Geraint. So discharge of conditions 10 and 22 of planning consent 17/P/0914 FUL have been agreed. Right, we go on to item 7, which is planning application 20/P/0471/CND, discharge of condition 18 of planning consent 17/P/0914 FUL relating to boundary treatment at land off Newport Road, Llantarnam, Cwmbran. And can I ask you, Helen, Principal Planner, to present the report?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Okay, yeah, so this is the third application relating to the site and the discharge conditions. This one relates to the details of the boundary treatments proposed on the development. And if I'll just run through it, basically requires details of all the boundary treatments, whether they're sort of on the outskirts of the site or whether in between properties or adjacent to the road. So there's a mixture of boundary treatments. Along the village green, on the inside of the existing hedging and tree line, will be low-level black railings to create a sense of enclosure, but create an attractive area for the village green area. And then we have some post and wire fencing again on the inside of the landscaping. That's just to demark the boundary. We've got new hedgerows proposed along the boundaries of the site. And then in between the properties, we have the traditional close boarding fencing. And in some areas where you have the side boundaries facing the internal roadways, there are brick screen walls. So here we have the details. Here are the fencing with some gaps at the bottom for wildlife tunnels for movement in between gardens. Here we have the brick screen walls within the development. These are the black railings for the village green area. And this is the post and wire fencing to be up against the inside of the landscaping buffers. And then we have some close boarded fencing as well to delineate some of the residential boundaries. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Helen. Geraint, have you seen any hands going up? Because I haven't. Are there any questions on this from members?
I can't see anything at the moment, Chair.
Right. Does anyone want to make a proposal?
I'll move.
Janet?
I'll second.
Right. So it's been proposed. Stuart, you proposed it and Janet seconded it.
Yeah.
Right. Geraint, I have to ask you again. Would you call the members' names out, please?
No problem, Chair. Councillor Ashley?
For.
Councillor Bevan? That was a 4. Councillor Constance?
4.
Councillor Evans?
4 with close monitoring, please.
Councillor Horler?
4.
Councillor James? Councillor Jenkins?
4.
Councillor Janet Jones?
4.
Councillor O'Connell?
4.
And Councillor Parish?
4.
Unanimous, Chair.
That's unanimous. Thank you very much. So discharge of condition 18 of planning consent 17/3/0914 has been agreed. Right. Thank you. Now we'll go on to agenda item 8, which is planning application 20/P/0720 FUL, demolition of existing building and redevelopment to form 13 apartments, including 11 one-bedroom and 2 two-bedroom units. Landscaping, suds, car parking and associated works at land at Victoria Street and Ventnor Road, Old Cwmbran. Helen, can I ask?
Chair, sorry to cut in, Chair, but Councillors Thomas and Jones need to re-enter the meeting for this last item.
Oh, I forgot all about them. They've been out so long. Thank you, good night.
I'm just checking. I think, yeah, Councillor Thomas has rejoined. I just need to get hold of Councillor Fade in a sec. I'll send her a request now, but I may have to give her a phone call just to.
Okay.
No, I'll send the request in the meantime.
Hang on just a minute for them to join us.
Thanks, Chair. I'm just going to go on to mute a sec, and I'll give her a ring and let her know that we're ready.
Yeah. I think somebody's turning their pages over and they're not muted.
Oh, I beg your pardon, Chair. I'm very sorry.
That's all right.
Councillor Jones is back in the meeting as well now, Chair. So that's Councillors Jones and Thomas both returned.
Thank you, Geraint. Right, do you want me to read agenda item 8 out again? Yes? Right, I'll read it out again for the two newcomers, shall I call them? Planning application 20-P/0720/FUL, and its demolition of existing building and redevelopment to form 13 apartments, including 11 one-bedroom and 2 two-bedroom units. Landscaping, sites, car parking and associated works at land at Victoria Street and Ventnor Road, Old Cwmbran, Cwmbran. So can I ask you now, Helen Smith, Principal Planner, to present the report?
Thank you, Chair. Right. This application relates to the development site at the corner of Ventnor Road and Victoria Street in Old Cwmbran. Members will know of it as the former Rifle Club and the Keith Smart offices on the corner. Planning permission was originally granted on this site in 2018 for the conversion and extensions of the existing buildings to create 10 apartments. There have been some issues with that development, given the constraints and the condition of the actual building. So Bron-Avon have purchased the site and looked about whether or not it would be more suitable for a redevelopment of the site. So the application is on the corner of Victoria Street and Ventnor Road, which is a very prominent site. It's opposite the Council House and the War Memorial and the Clock Tower. Just to the north is the public car park, and this area here is predominantly the commercial area, which then leads into the high-dense residential development in this location. So the development is to demolish all of the buildings on the site and to construct a new building, partly 2-storey and partly 3-storey on the site. The original scheme include, as it was conversion of the existing building, retained the frontage of the site onto Ventnor Road. A whole different design approach has been put in place with this development, following extensive discussions and negotiations in terms of what's the best form of development to develop this site comprehensively. The scheme now includes a frontage onto Victoria Street, which is the primary street in this location. And it's 3 stories on the corner, where the scale and the massing is appropriate for that location, leading down to 2.5-storey and then 2-storey as the closer you get to the more traditional 2-storey character of the surrounding residential properties. Parking is to be proposed off Ventnor Road. The original scheme had 2 parking areas separately accessed off Victoria Street. So it's effectively handed the proposed development. Just for members' information, you may recall this is the originally approved scheme, the layout, just to demonstrate that this was the existing building to be converted. Here were the 2 access points off Victoria Street. This here was going to be a residential block, and then this here, but they were all going to be 2-storey properties. Here we have the design of the scheme. Extensive pre-application discussions have taken place with the developer, and we actually engaged with the Design Commission for Wales to add value and get the correct form of scale and massing and development for this prominent and important site. So as you can see, this is the corner element, which will relate to the more commercial and civic area of Old Cwmbran, and in particular the Council House opposite. It drops down to 2.5 stories and then drops down to further 2 stories further down Victoria Street. And here we have the elevation facing Ventnor Road with the parking in this area in front of this elevation here. This is the corner element facing the prominent sort of open square area of Victoria Street, and a lot of work has gone into assessing the scale and massing to ensure that the existing properties relate to the proposed development. And here we go. We can do, this is just to demonstrate that consideration has been given to how the proposal impacts on the surrounding properties. A contemporary approach was considered the most acceptable way forward on this site, given its prominent location and the desire for placemaking in the area. The site at the moment is fairly run down, and high quality development would bring value to this important area. The materials have been selected to complement the existing traditional materials, but with a contemporary twist on them. So we have the buff brick. The brick will be laid in certain patterns to add interest to the elevations and to break the elevations up. And a zinc roof is proposed to be a modern take on the slate in the area. The colour will reflect the colour of the slates. The applicants have generated some CGI images of the proposed development. I think these show quite well how the scale of massing have been designed so that they blend in with the existing scale of massing of the surrounding area. Again, I think this demonstrates the higher height of this element here links in with this area here. Applicants have also proposed some public art in this area here, some to reflect and to interact with the war memorial and the clock tower in the square. Again, here we have another image which shows the parking area off Ventnor Road, and you can see here that the commercial properties are mainly in this location, changing to the more residential properties to the south. And this is another image, again, just showing how the improvements to the public realm would be sought. We have some existing images of the site. These have been vacant for quite some time. They have become quite run down in the past. Here we have a view down Ventnor Road showing the former rifle club, and you can see that it's in a fairly poor condition. This is a view down Victoria Street showing the area of unmaintained open space here. And here we have a view of the rear of the rifle club. And this is going to be the primary frontage for the development. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Helen. Are there any questions from members? Stuart, Faye, Jason. Stuart first, please. Oh, no, Steve. I think Steve was first. Sorry, I was looking in the wrong place.
Hey, I'm always first.
Geraint, me ask Geraint. Am I right, Geraint? Because he's
the first person was definitely Councillor Evans, Chair.
Yeah, top banana. My question is, because of the close proximity to other buildings, my concern is the demolition and the equipment. What have we got in place to mitigate that?
Yes, yes, it's a very constrained site, given its size, its location, its proximity to the existing residential properties. The demolition of the building will have to be undertaken very carefully, and we've attached a condition for not only a construction environment management plan where they set out how deliveries of the site will take place, where they'll be taken, where's the compound going to be, but also how the existing buildings are going to be demolished, because there are a couple of issues at the moment. There are bats in the building, so they have to have a bat license before they demolish the building. So they have to demolish it to protect the bats, but also to protect the residential properties in terms of any noise and disturbance. So we put a condition which requires all this information to be submitted for us for approval before they start any demolition works. And the developers are aware of this, and they will be working with their contractors to make sure that they submit the scheme for us for approval, and we will ensure that all the measures are in place to minimise. I mean, obviously there will be some disruption, it's inevitable and unavoidable, but we think that these measures will limit these to an acceptable degree.
I'm going to come back in, Chair, as well. Yes. I'm just concerned, particularly the roads are not that wide, and I'm concerned with the traffic because there are businesses along that premises, and with residents parking up alongside the old rifle club, they're quite narrow. So that's another concern I've got.
Yes, it is very restricted, and they would have to include a traffic management plan of how the construction traffic and deliveries will take place. I don't know whether Paul Wheeldon wants to come in and make a comment about this.
I don't remember seeing this one go to community council.
Morning, morning, Chair. Yeah, part of there'll be a construction and environmental management plan. There always are issues in constrained places like this, but we will manage it effectively. It's always done sometimes by signal control in certain areas, off hours working. So yeah, it will be controlled from a highway standpoint. We're quite used to dealing with construction on highway or near highway. So luckily there, to be honest, there are a lot of double yellow lines around the place which restrict on-street parking. So that is a benefit, to be honest, because you don't have to disperse those cars somewhere else. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Right, you okay with that, Steve? Right, I got Jason next on the list.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to talk about some of the residents' concerns regarding the number of one-bedroom properties and the fact that they're looking to fill those with people who may not respect the area. Did you consider the number of one-bedroom properties, increasing that so it's more family-orientated? And did you work with the developer to kind of make the most out of this, rather than have a large number of one-bedroom, have 2 or 3 bedrooms? And the other broad point I would say is I much prefer this type of development where we're bringing in a new building on top of an area that's quite run down, rather than building on green spaces. I think this makes a lot more sense. Will the developer then commit to working with the local residents ensuring they're brought along on the development rather than imposing things on them? And I think that would mitigate a lot of residents' concerns if they felt that they were being listened to as the development was progressing.
Yes, thank you, Chair. In terms of the number of one-bedroom apartments, as you've read in the report, it is a constrained site, and parking, it was difficult to achieve the level of parking required to make the development viable. So there was a balance in terms of number of units and number of parking. And obviously one-bedroom units help achieve that balance. But in addition to that, this housing mix of one-bedroom apartments and a couple of two-bedroom apartments have been done in consultation with our housing strategy manager. She's in support of this application and accepts that this level of one-bedroom apartments is acceptable in this location and is needed. And it's good to note that 2 of the one-bedroom apartments are adapted apartments as well. So that will obviously help provide an additional facility for people who need extra facilities in their accommodation. So we did work with the developer to ensure that the mix was suitable. And going forward, given the nature in changing demographics of household, the number of people in households and the need for less larger, more family-orientated properties, we feel that this level is acceptable. In addition to this, this site does lend itself to 1- and 2-bedroom properties rather than family housing, given its location and limited gardens and so on. So we have done it in consultation with Housing Strategy, who are happy to support this proposal as well.
Yeah, thank you. Can I just come back quickly? I think it would be useful if we heard from Dave, and I don't know if Alan has made a representation, just to get the local residents' view.
Yeah, I've got Hugh Bevan next on the list. Hugh?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, a couple of things, please. This is obviously in a very prominent place here.
because of its location on the corner and where it is. And I agree with comments that Jason made in terms of welcoming development on an existing site rather than taking up greenfield spaces all of the time. I think that a lot of work has gone into the visual impact that this development is going to have on the surrounding area. And I think a lot of the considerations, there's a lot more weight attached to that in terms of this particular application. So what I would like to see was a very strict enforcement of the usage of the materials as specified in the plan submitted. I would not like to be in a position where there's any deviation whatsoever from the original specification and it being brought back before committee to retrospectively approve any changes to the facade, the construction materials or the roof. This has got to be delivered exactly as per the planning application stands, and I think the conditions need to be very strong. And I know that Richard outlined earlier that resources are limited, but I think because of the visual aesthetic of this building, the enforcement officers need to monitor this one throughout its development to ensure that we get what's promised on the can. And just picking up on a point that Helen just made in terms about accessibility and some of the apartments there being used for people with disabilities, is there going to be a full disability study provided as part of the process? I'm talking now in terms of obviously wider doorways, dropped units, lifts, not having any stairs. I mean, if there's planning, if it's supposed to be disabled, available for disabled persons, then there needs to be a full disability study undertaken. So I wanted some feedback on that as well, please.
Helen, please.
Yes, in terms of the adapted units, they have, as part of the design process, they've ensured that the interiors are suitable for people in wheelchairs, such as turning facilities and the bathroom facilities and width of doorways. So they've been specifically, those standards have specifically been met as part of the design process. They've also undertaken to make sure that the 2 disabled parking spaces are also easily accessible for anybody in a wheelchair or with disabilities. So as part of their design process, they've already undertaken that review. And as they are affordable housing units, they have a higher level of specification that they need to be designed for. It's the development quality requirements of the Welsh Government to make sure that these standards are met with affordable housing, which includes the adapted units. So that process has been undertaken by the applicant as part of their design proposals.
Thank you, Helen. Right, I've got Dave now next on the list.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I'm not sure whether the committee...
Part of the question wasn't answered, Chair, in terms of the construction and materials. That hasn't been picked up on.
Apologies for that. Yes, you're right. Yes, we completely agree with you. You know, a lot of work has gone into the design of this scheme. We worked closely with the Design Commission for Wales, and they were very keen on all the design specification. And it's always with design, especially with developments like this, the details of the development are crucial in terms of contemporary approach. So yeah, we will ensure that the scheme is built out as in accordance with the plans.
Okay, thank you.
Right, Dave, perhaps you can have you in now. Thank you.
Yeah, just make sure that everyone's done now before I start my chatter off. I suppose I'm all right to speak now, am I?
Yes. Dave, I just said, yeah,
Thank-
sorry about before.
Well, there we are. Anyway, just quickly, I'm not sure whether the committee can remember the previous design by the private company. I was more than happy with that. The way they used the existing buildings in their design, I felt was great and complemented the area perfectly. This particular design, I don't believe complements this historical area of Old Cwmbran at all. The fact that it's 1 story higher than everywhere else, I think will dominate the area of Old Cwmbran. And for me, just based on the way it's going to look, I won't be voting for this development at all. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Dave. Right, we've got Stuart now on the list. Next on the list.
The trouble that I've got several things I want to say. One is about the actual design of the building. Hugh raised a point about the materials. You've got a predominantly Victorian, it's about 1880, 1840 buildings made out of Cwmbran brick, red brick, yellow brick. You put in modern material in. I don't think they do match, to be quite honest. The council house is a fine building. It's not listed. I actually know all the listings now. I looked them up the other day, funnily enough. I was looking at the new town. But if you look at these buildings, we've got an opportunity to actually replace them. I mean, I'm quite happy to vote for this, but at the end of the day, there's certain aspects of this building that I don't see. It's a utility sort of thing that housing associations build, and they could build it anywhere in this valley, to be quite honest. You've got a historical area. This area is not listed. I've never understood why not. And the solicitor said the council house over there is the existing building. Its area. You've got a square over there. You put that building in there, it's going to dominate it. Somebody's right about that. It's a generic modern building as done by architects. There's a problem they got about how you get rid of the Rifle Club, the toilet there, and the Keith Smart Place, and how you put it on that site. Now, there's an opportunity here to build a modern building. I've got no problem with that. I don't see any global change mitigation measures in there either. Where's the solar panels? Where all the rest of it? We can put that into a modern building if you want. Where's the lifts? Because you're going to be doing that. There's none of that in there. I've not seen anything mentioned at all. So if we're going to put buildings into the 21st century, where is all that? Bronavon doesn't do that stuff. I've never seen it in any of their designs. We're even putting that in the council house, or trying to. So we're aesthetics to match the area, Victorian buildings, which we've got an opportunity to take away the Rifle Club because it is not a pretty building, and put something in there. It brings us back to it. You've got that opportunity. That's one lot of that. The other thing was our dear old friends, the bats. What are we going to do with that? Because I'm not being surprised if we've got some of them in the council house as well. I want to know what's happened to those bats. That's another issue. Then there's the whole thing about active travel and people. We're putting car parking spaces in the building that don't really need it because you've got some of the best active travel in the borough sat there. Buses going through the place all the time. Minimal amount of car parking you really need in that place. You don't need to put car parks there. So a blasted great car park round the back. I've never understood why that building's got a car park. You've got an enormous great car park around the back of the car. You just need to put a couple of car parking spaces. Never understood the obsession. If you're going to build social housing, build it without car parking in it. And there's where are the bicycle parking spaces and all the other stuff? If you've got disabled people and all that in there, they're going to need the car parking. I understand that, but that amount of car parking in there is a lot in that space. If you go up that road, there's issues up there, and you've got a massive great car park. We ought to be doing something better in a way. This building's a bit sort of stayed as far as I'm concerned. I'll just make that view. Unless you say to me, that's all we can do in that space.
Right, Helen, would you like to reply?
Yes, thank you. if I just address the materials first of all, a lot of thought was given to the type of materials proposed, and an assessment of the existing materials in the area was made. It was felt, and both again the Design Commission agreed with this approach, was that rather than actually replicating the existing materials, it was to draw on some of those characteristics. And what the buff bricks that they're proposing, that's been drawn from the traditional buff materials that are used on the Victorian buildings to highlight the window surrounds. And if you see it on the council house buildings, there is quite a lot of the yellow buff bricks used, primarily around the windows and door surrounds. So it was chosen to pick on those materials and reflect a modern interpretation of them. In terms of the bats, yeah, the survey it picked up on one bat using it as a roost. So it's not a massive roost, but it's a roost nevertheless, which is then automatically protected. So the developer will have to apply for European Protected Species License to do any works inside the building and before any demolition of it. The mitigation will be they're providing bat bricks and bat boxes within the new building, and also there's going to be a lighting scheme to make sure there's no harsh external lighting to impact on the bat movements. There's also been some ecological enhancement, which are going to have some the landscaping scheme, and also there's bird boxes proposed as well. In terms of the parking, we have relaxed the requirements of the parking on this site, given the constraints, and we felt that a balance had to be struck to ensure that sufficient some on-street parking was also provided, but we did accept that it's in a very sustainable location with the car park nearby, which is why Highways were happy in this instance to reduce and relax their normal parking standards. And again, Design Commission for Wales were of the same opinion of your councillor, in terms of they felt that parking could limit, what could be done on site, but we felt it was important to have a balance. In terms of the active travel, yes, it's in a very sustainable location, and the developers are proposing bike stands within the parking area, and also there's some of the units inside have internal parking spaces within the communal areas. We've also asked the applicant to provide a sort of parking management plan to, as the site will be managed by Bron Afon, in terms of their tenants, what are their proposals in terms of their lettings, and how are they going to encourage residents to utilise the active travel methods. In terms of providing lifts, obviously this would be preferable. However, lifts do take up a lot of internal floor space, and if you did that, you would lose some of the units, or maybe one of the units, this site is quite difficult to develop in terms of the viability. So again, a balance had to be struck in terms of ensuring the site could come forward. Thank you. I hope I've answered those queries.
Okay, Stuart.
No, the other aspect was the actual design for 21st century in terms of issues like that bit, because all I see with their property is they don't seem to be doing any of that. Solar panels, all that stuff. They just seem to basic brick jobs.
Do you want to comment on that, Helen?
They have to comply with the current building regulation standards in terms of the building's thermal protection and so on. So they do comply with the current building standards. But you are right, there are a lot of opportunities that could be had in terms of solar panels and innovative ways of developing. But at the moment, yes, they comply.
It's extremely dull building, isn't it? But it's bluntly on that location where they got the chance. Right, if we're going to go one way or the other with this, they can reflect the area and put a building in there that, it is a location that is quite exciting in a lot of ways, and they're getting the grants to do it, I suspect. This building could be quite a useful public building in that location. So I'm just wondering whether they're missing an opportunity there.
Right, okay, those are your opinions, Stuart.
I know that, and it's one of the few locations left in this a small, development like that could offer quite, a lot there. But it's the same with the global climate change and all the rest of it. Buildings are going to have to reflect that over the next 30 years, and it's part of well-being in future generations.
Right, thank you, Stuart. Janet, right, we have Janet now.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Helen. In view that we are demolishing the former rifle club, is there any financial support or that they're going to give towards any recreational facilities within the area? Any section, 106 money?
Yes, there is. It's going to be subject to a Section 106 agreement, subject to the planning permission being granted, and it is in compliance with our supplementary planning guidance. So there will be, obviously, as it's 13 units, it's limited to the amount of contribution, but there will be a contribution towards off-site play area, and what will happen is we'll find a scheme in where we can allocate that monies to. There'll be some money towards some off-site open space provision enhancements, and also some monies for adult recreation as well. That the development does comply with the planning obligations.
Thanks, Helen.
Right, thank you. Faye, would you like to come in next?
Yes, thank you. I do applaud the fact that this is being redeveloped. I'm to be quite honest with you, I'm a little bit worried about how tall this is going to be, and it's already a very dark and can be depressing area down Victoria Street and around there. And like Stuart and like David Thomas, I think this is an opportunity to actually enhance the area, make it lighter, make it brighter. And I'm very worried that we're actually downplaying things and perhaps going backwards, and I don't want it to look like a slum, and I'm very worried that's what it's going to look like. And I'm not sure about the roofing material, because opposite my house, Bronavon have put some houses with tin roofs, and everybody who walks out with me says, well, that looks a little bit like Calcutta, and it doesn't enhance the area or is in keeping with the area. And I'm just a little bit concerned. I haven't been to Calcutta. It might be lovely, but that's just what my mum and a few other people have said when they've walked past. I'm just a little bit concerned that perhaps it's too totalitarian, and I think it's not perhaps in keeping with the Victorian side of things. And I would like to see it a bit lighter and a bit brighter. And I hope that the roofing material is going to succeed and not make it too dark, especially with the tallness of the building. Thank you.
Right, Helen, do you want to respond?
Yeah, so it is a large-scale building on the corner, but the principle of the scale and massing of the development was that it was felt that area, because it related mainly to that commercial part element, and particularly the council house building, which, although the council house building is only 2-storey, because of the nature of the building, it is taller than an average 2-storey dwelling. So although the corner element is 3 stories, actually its height is comparable to the council house building. And then it was felt that because then at the further down Victoria Street and Ventnor Road that you went, that was into the more residential scale area. That's why the step down approach was considered to be appropriate. So the 3-story element predominantly is located adjacent to the commercial areas, which we felt was the most appropriate way of creating a focal point for that area, to relate well to the scale of those buildings in that area, to help form and improve the spacing around that square and the war memorial, but then obviously reflecting the more traditional lower scale of the 2-story properties further down on your traditional terrace streets. So we felt that that design approach in terms of the scale and massing was suitable and actually helped with the placemaking objectives of improving that area and making sure that the development ties in nicely with the surrounding area.
Thank you, Helen. Right, Dave, you're next.
Sorry, could I just ask about the roofing material again? Sorry.
Right, roof material, you can do that.
Again, apologies for that. Yes, the roofing materials. again, because it was a contemporary approach, it was decided quite early on in consultation with the Design Commission for Wales that the roof materials should reflect the colour of the traditional slate in the area, but be a modern reflection on the type of material used. And we feel, given that the zinc, I know the tin roof that you're referring to, and this isn't anything like that. The zinc material is high quality development, high quality material, which then, and with a standing seam as well, it'll reflect sort of the characteristics of the slate roof in terms of its colour and its appearance. But yet it is different. But we felt that when you start adding traditional features into a modern and contemporary building, you dilute the contemporary nature of the building, and then it neither becomes one or the other. You either the most appropriate way forward is that you either go for a traditional approach where you reflect things wholeheartedly, or you take a contemporary view of the traditional features in the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Right, Dave, would you like to come in?
I need to make sure now. I got to check, make sure no one else wants to say anything in there. Because every time I sat over my mouth, someone says something. It's all right now. Yeah.
No, nobody wants to come in, Dave.
That's
Please
great. That's brilliant. Okay. Just quickly, it's nice to see that we've relaxed the parking constraints here for Burnavon, but we couldn't do that for the Cath in Lantana. But there we go. But I'd like to say, you need to, members need to understand that this building will be a complete eyesore in comparison to everything else there. It won't complement the area at all. It is a story higher than everywhere else. So, I mean, a classic example of how you can have a modern building in an old area is Somerton House, down at the bottom of Lantana Road. The building complements the area. It's a new build. It looks lovely, but the materials that were used match the surrounding area. So Councillor Faye Jones was absolutely spot on with what she was saying. She's made the points that I wanted to make perfectly. I mean, I haven't got to go over it again. Members need to understand this building will it won't fit into the Victorian style of Old Cwmbran. You can have a new build, but still have it to complement the area, which this building doesn't, and it is one story higher than everywhere else. And it would be nice to see if we could, go back to Burnavon. I'd support it if it complemented the area, which it doesn't, and have slate tiles like everybody else. But that's all I want to say on it. Apart from, I'd like to ask Helen about the Section 106 money, because I'm fairly convinced this is going to get smashed through, as it always does anyway. What projects have been identified for the Section 106 money?
Helen, would you like to come in with that?
Yes, we haven't identified them at the moment because the Section 106 is drawn up subject to planning permission being granted. We will be in consultation with our recreation team, and they will provide us with details of certain areas within the area where they could use the money for particular improvements, because we have to specify particular projects in the Section 106 agreement. So we haven't actually identified those yet, but that will be done as part of the Section 106 process, which is done subject to a resolution to approve.
Right, thank you. Okay, Dave?
Yes, yeah, thank you.
Right. There's one hand up. Stuart, if you can be...
have you got an elevation of the council house and that building together, please?
Yes, if I just share my presentation again, bear with me a second. The CGI images, I think, show it quite well. Okay.
The drawing, yeah, that's the one.
So there we, again, this is probably a bit difficult to show you from the angle because of obviously it's looking down. But as you can see here, this is the council house building and this is a commercial building on the top of Ventnor Road. You can see there's a clear sort of step down from the higher scale commercial buildings. So it does, you know, this area is characterised by larger scale buildings. Admittedly, they're not 3-storey, although there is one a property just further north of the Council House building, which is 2.5 stories high with dormer windows in it. But this is the commercial area, they are generally traditionally designed as bigger scale buildings, and you can clearly see a step down into the more traditional, smaller 2-storey properties.
I mean, can I ask a question, Chair, if I may?
Yes.
I wondered why they hadn't gone for red, because it would have looked better than that yellow, to be honest. I have questions, but it's a matter of aesthetics, isn't it, really?
It's not anticipated to be a yellow brick. We have asked for the exact brick to be submitted for us to approve. The buff brick is more, if I bear with me a second, I go back. It's more of this kind of, it's a darker beigey material rather than a yellow, which is more, it has a more of appearance of a weathered yellow brick.
Right, thank you, Helen. I don't think there are any more questions. So would someone like to propose a motion?
Chair, what?
Yeah, I'll move it, Chair.
Right, it's been moved. Is there a seconder? No seconder? Right.
Chair, can I make a proposal, Chair? I don't know if this is the right way to do it, but I would recommend that we go back to Bronavon and ask them for a redesign that's more in keeping with the local area.
We're not happy, I don't think.
Right, I'll have to have advice on this.
Can I come in, Chair? Obviously, it's committee's prerogative to do that. I'm assuming that you're talking about a deferral as opposed to refusal. All I can really say is just echo what Helen has said, that there's been a lot of work put into this building. The Design Commission that Helen mentioned quite a few times, they are taking an active role at the moment in placemaking, and we wanted to make sure that we had independent design advice on this building, which we've had, and they've endorsed this design very much so. So in terms of the actual design and materials, we very much as officers endorse that. But you know, if members are inclined to defer it, then obviously that's for them to do.
I'd like to propose we defer it and come back to a later meeting, please. Commonly held view at the moment.
I think from my point of view, I would recommend a deferral. We're not asking for a structural redesign, I don't think. I think what we're asking for is the external features of the building be reviewed in line with its neighbouring, counterparts, more Victorian type of materials, so that it blends a bit better.
Yes.
I do think from the conversations we've had today that the committee would support that.
I second that as well.
Right, it's been seconded.
I agree with that, Jason.
Right, you can vote now. You don't have to say what you think yet. Geraint, could you go through in alphabetical order again, please?
Is that voting with what Jason's just
amendment vote first?
Yes, it's to defer it. That's what you said.
All right, thanks, Chair.
Yes. We didn't have a seconder for Hugh's proposal.
No.
So we've got a proposer and a seconder now to defer it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. If I can start with Councillor Ashley, please.
For.
Councillor Bevan.
We can't hear you, Hugh.
I just wanted to say, I'm glad there's been an acknowledgement in principle of the development, and I do take on board the comments the other councillors have made about the aesthetic. So I will support the amended motion to review the design aesthetic and how it fits in with the existing structure. So I will support the amended proposal.
So that's a 4.
Yes.
Thank you.
Got it.
Councillor Constance,
4.
Councillor Evans,
4.
Councillor Hawler,
4.
Councillor James,
4.
Councillor Jenkins,
4.
Councillor Faye Jones,
4.
Councillor Janet Jones,
4.
Councillor O'Connell,
4.
Councillor Parish,
4.
and Councillor Thomas.
4.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Right. Thank you. Right. This planning application has been deferred for, how can I say, for the planners to look into different and more appropriate colour scheme. Is that right? Does anybody want to say anything else? No?
Chair, I think Polly Ellis from Legal Services here, just to confirm that the deferral was for planners to go away with Bronavon to review the external materials of the building. And I think that was what was proposed and what has been.
I think it was, Polly, and it was also to refer it back to the surroundings, because that was the bit I think we were all a bit queasy about. That's a right word.
Okay, thank you, Polly. Right. I will thank all the officers and the committee for your attendance and contributions. I will now close the meeting.